Hi guys, welcome to the channel again. Yesterday I released a video about a full install of Arch Linux on a UEFI system with productivity and other tools, and today we are gonna do the same on a BIOS MBR system. So let's get going. So there we go, we are now on the terminal and I logged in via SSH, so we can start our Arch installation. So the first thing you might want to do is to check your key map. If you have a keyboard which is not a US keyboard, then you need to configure this, as the Arch ISO comes by default with the US keyboard. So to find out your layout, we can type in locale ctl list-key maps and hit enter. And as you can see here, we have a long list of key maps you can choose from. So we need to narrow the search down. Let me type in Q here to exit and clean up the terminal and re-pull up the last command with the up arrow. And then add in the grep function to narrow the search. So let's add a space and then a pipe and then grep. So my keyboard is a Swiss keyboard which has a CH in there. So I'll type in CH and hit enter. And as you can see, I get now a list of keyboards which contains the strings. So the one I need is the first one. So to load it, I will type in load keys and then the string. So DE_CH-Latin1 and hit enter. And now my keyboard is fully functional. So I can clean up the terminal. So the next step is to check our internet connection. So let's type in IP space A and hit enter. And as you can see here, I have an IP on my second interface, which is ending with 42, and that's because I have an Ethernet cable connected to my computer. If you have Wi-Fi, you can type in wifi-menu, and when you hit enter, you will be presented with a list of networks. You can select yours, enter the password, and you'll have an IP as well. So let me cancel this up and clean up the terminal. And now we can proceed by updating our mirror list. So in order to download packages from the internet, we need to have the best servers available. And to do this, we need to install a small package called Reflector. So let's begin by first synchronizing the servers. So let's type in pacman-s YYY and hit enter. And now let's install Reflector by typing in pacman-s reflector and hit enter. Proceed with the installation by hitting enter. And the package is installed, so I clean up the terminal. Now we can use Reflector to create a mirror list. So we'll type in Reflector-C for the country. So in my case, right now I am in Switzerland, so I'll type in Switzerland. You can replace this with your country. And then -A for the age, that means how many hours since the servers have been updated. In my case, I'm looking for servers which have been updated since 6 hours. And then --sort, as we want to sort the servers from rate. That means the fastest servers are going to be on top. And then --save, because we need to save this information in our mirror list directory, which is /etc/pacman.d/mirrorlist, and hit enter. Now we can resynchronize the servers. So we'll type in again pacman-s YYY and hit enter. And our mirror list is up to date. So we can clean up the terminal and let's type in lsblk and let's have a look at our disk here. So we have one disk in the machine, VDA, which is 150 gigabytes. So we need to partition this disk first. And to do this, we'll use fdisk. So let's go ahead and type in fdisk/dev/VDA and hit enter. Now, this is a BIOS MBR system, and it has only a 150 gigabytes hard drive. So we can use a DOS disk label for that, which was automatically created. So the first partition I want to create here, it's the swap partition. So I'll type in N for new and hit enter. And it's a primary partition here, so I'll type in P and hit enter. Partition number 1 and as default is fine, so I hit enter here. The first sector is also fine, so I'll accept the default. And the last sector defines the size of the partition. So the rule of thumb is the swap partition should be double of the memory. In this machine, I have 2 gigabytes of memory. So I will make double of that and I'll type in +4G and hit enter. Now, the system created a new partition type Linux. We need to change the type to swap. So let's type in T for type and hit enter. And we need to find the code for the swap partition. So if we don't know the code, we can type in capital L and hit enter to see the list. And as we can see here on the list, Linux swap is number 82. So we can type in now 82 and hit enter. And now it's a Linux swap partition type. So now let's create also our root partition. So let's type in N for new and hit enter. It's a primary partition. So let's type in P and hit enter. Partition number 2 as a default is fine. So we hit enter here. First sector is also fine with the default. So let's hit enter. And also I'll accept the defaults for the last sector because I want this partition to take the remainder of the disk. So I'll just hit enter here. Now we need to write the changes to the disk. So we'll type in W and hit enter. And now the partition table has been written on the disk. Let's clean up the terminal and type in lsbk. And we can see here we have VDA1, which is our swap partition, 4 GB, and VDA2, which is our root partition of 146 GB. So we partition the disk. Now we need to format the partitions. So let's begin with the swap partition, and let's type in mkswap, and then the partition path, so /dev/VDA1, and hit enter. Now let's activate the swap by typing in swap on, and then the partition path /dev/VDA1, and hit enter. Now let's also format VDA2, our root partition. So we'll type in mkfs for makefile system, and then we'll use the ext4 file type, and then the partition path. So /dev/VDA2, and hit enter. And the partitions are now formatted. So let me clean up the terminal, and I'll type again lsblk to have the partitions in front of me. Now we can mount the partitions, and here we need to mount actually only VDA2, which is our root partition. So let's do this by typing in mount /dev/VDA2, and this is going to be mounted under the /mount directory, which is our installation directory, and hit enter. Now we can install the base system, so we'll type in pacstrap and then /mount, and then the packages we want to install. So in my case, base, then Linux, and also Linux-firmware, and also an editor, which we'll need later. So in my case, Nano. And the next package is specific if you have an Intel processor or an AMD processor. If you're installing on a virtual machine like I am, you don't need to install the next package. But if you're installing this on a computer with an Intel processor, you can install also Intel-ucode, which will provide specific firmware for your processor. And if you have an AMD processor, you can replace Intel ucode with AMD-ucode. As I said, if you're installing on a virtual machine, you can skip this package. And in fact, I'm not going to install it. And once we are ready, we just hit enter. So it's going to take a moment to download and install the packages, and I'll be back when it's done. And there you go, the packages are installed, so we can clean up the terminal. And now we need to generate the file system table. This is the file where all our mount points are stored. So let's do this by typing in gen fstab for generate fstab -U. That means we are going to generate the file system table based on the UUID of the partitions, and then /mount. And then we append this information by typing twice the major than symbol to /mount/etc/fstab and hit enter. Now let's have a look at our fstab file. So let's type in cat /mount/etc/fstab and hit enter. And you can see here we have our VDA2 partition. This is our root partition with its UUID, the mount point, the file system type, its options, and the file system checks. Same goes for the swap partition, which is here with its UUID, the mount point, file system type, options, and file system checks. So everything looks good, and we can clean up the terminal. So now we need to move into the installation and leave the installer. So we'll type in arch-root/mount and hit enter. And let's clean up the terminal. You can see also the login prompt changed. Now we are not anymore in the ISO installer. And now we proceed by defining the time zone. So we need to find out in which time zone we are to put into the system. So to do this, we can type in time date ctl list-time zones and hit enter. So as you can see, again, we have a long list of time zones we can choose from. So we need to narrow the search down. Let me type Q to quit and clean up the terminal. Pull up the last command with the up arrow, insert a space and then a pipe again, and then grep. And the city closest to me is Zurich right now. So I type in Zurich and hit enter. And it returns only one result. And this is what I need to tell the system. So let's do this now by typing in ln-sf/user/share/zone-info/ the string we found out. So Europe in my case, /Zurich in my case. And then we are going to link this to /etc/local time and hit enter. Now we can synchronize the hardware clock to the system clock. So we'll type in hwclock space --sys to hc and hit enter. And now we can edit our locale.gen file. So let's type in nano/etc/locale.gen and hit enter. And we need to look for our locales here. So in my case, I'm looking for English US. which is right here. And we need to choose the one which has UTF-8. And then we need to uncomment it by deleting the hashtag. And then we hit Ctrl-O and Enter to save the file and Ctrl-X to exit the editor. Now we can generate the locales by typing in locale-gen and hit Enter. And now we can also work on the locale.conf file. There are many ways on how we can do this, but I'm going to use nano. And let's type in nano/etc/locale.conf and hit Enter. And we'll put in lang, all in capital letters, equal our locale, so en_us.utf-8. And then Ctrl-O and Enter to save the file and Ctrl-X to exit the editor. Now, if you changed also the key map at the beginning of the video, you also need to insert the key map layout on the vconsole.conf file. So let's edit the file by typing in nano etc/vconsole.conf and hit Enter. And we'll put in here key map, all in capital letter, equal the key map we chose at the beginning. So in my case, it was DE_CH-Latin1, and then Ctrl-O and Enter to save the file and Ctrl-X to exit the editor. Now we can work on the host name. So let's type in nano/etc/hostname and hit Enter. You can choose basically a name for your machine. In my case, I'll call it Arch BIOS, and then Ctrl-O and Enter to save the file and Ctrl-X to exit the editor. Now let's work also on the hosts file. So let's type in nano/etc/hosts and hit Enter. Move down to the empty space and type in the IPv4 address, which is 127.0.0.1 tab and then localhost. In the next line, we insert our IPv6 address, which is : 1, then a tab again, and then localhost again. And then in the last line, we'll type in 127.0.1.1, a tab again, our host name we chose before. In my case, it was Arch BIOS .local domain, then a tab again, and then again our host name. So in my case, Arch BIOS. And then Ctrl-O and Enter to save the file, and Ctrl-X to exit the editor. Now it's time to give our root user a password. So let's type in passwd and hit Enter. And let's enter the new password and retype it. Okay, let's clean up the terminal. And now it's time to install grub, our bootloader, and some other packages. So let's do this by typing in pacman-S grub, our bootloader, and then some networking tools. So the first one is Network Manager. Then we have also Network-Manager-Applet. Then we have also some wireless tools. So the first one is wireless_tools, and also WPA_supplicant. We have also dialog, and also OS-prober. Then we might also install mtools and DOS-fs-tools. And let's install also two development packages. One is base-devel, and the other one is linux-headers. And I'm going to install also some packages for our Bluetooth services and printing services. So for the Bluetooth is blues, and also blues-utils. The printing service is cups. And I'm going to install also two extra packages. One is xdg-utils, and the other one is xdg-user-dirs, which is going to create user directories. And then we can just hit Enter. We accept the defaults here by hitting Enter, and proceed with installation by hitting Enter. So it's going to take a moment again to download and install the packages, and I'll be back when it's done. So the packages are now installed, and let's clean up the terminal. Now we can proceed by installing grub, our bootloader. So let's type in grub-install. We define the target machine. In this case, it's a BIOS machine, so we'll define --target equal i386-PC. And then we define our disk path, which was /dev/vda, and hit Enter. And there you go, the installation is done. Now we need to generate the configuration file for grub, so we'll type in grub-mkconfig-o for the output, and the output goes under /boot/grub/grub.cfg, and hit Enter. And this is done. Now let's proceed by enabling some services. And first, let me clean up the terminal. So the first service we can enable is the Bluetooth service. So let's type in systemctl enable Bluetooth. And then we can just hit Enter. And the result, the installation is done. Now let's proceed by enabling some services. And first, let me clean up the terminal. So the first service we can enable is the Bluetooth service. So let's type in systemctl enable Bluetooth. And and hit enter. And let's enable also cups, our printing system, by typing in systemctl enable org.cups.cupsd and hit enter. There you go. The last service we can enable is Network Manager so that we have internet when we boot up. So let's type in systemctl enable Network Manager and hit enter. And we can clean up the terminal. Now let's proceed by adding a user to the system. So let's type in user add -m capital G and then wheel. This has to do with the wheel group for the sudo privileges. We'll change this in a second. And then the username. So Hermano in my case. And then we just hit enter. Now let's give a password to the user. So we'll type in passwd and then the username and hit enter. Enter the new password and retype it. And last, let's type in editor equal nano and then vice sudo and hit enter. Scroll down until we find the wheel group we talked about before, which is right here. And we have two of those, and we need to choose the first one, which has the line all equal all, and delete the hashtag here. And then hit Ctrl O and enter to save the file, and Ctrl X to exit the editor. So let me clean up the terminal. And before we reboot the machine, I want to install an extra package. I do this separately because this is optional for you guys. It's just for me to connect to SSH when I reboot the machine afterwards. So I will install OpenSSH. So I'll type in pacman-s and then OpenSSH and hit enter. Proceed with installation here, and SSH is installed. And I'll enable the system also by typing in systemctl enable sshd and hit enter. There you go. Now let's exit the installation and return to the installer. So let's type in exit. And now let's unmount all the partitions by typing in umount-a and hit enter. And let's reboot the machine by typing in reboot and hit enter. And I'll move to my virtual machine here. We will be greeted by the grab bootloader, which is there. So we can just enter again the installation. There you go. So I'll enter with my username here and my new password. And we are logged into the system. So let's see if I have an IP. I'll type in IP space A. And you can see there on the interface number 2, I have an IP ending with 96. So I go back to my main terminal with SSH, and then let's continue the installation. So let me go back there. And I clean up the terminal here and type in SSH hermano at 192.168.122 and 96 and hit enter. Accept the fingerprint, enter my password, and we are logged in into my Arch installation. So again, let's type in IP space A. So if you have an Ethernet cable connected to your computer, you'll have an IP here like I do. If you have Wi-Fi, you can type in now NMTUI and hit enter. And you can go down to activate a connection. You'll see a list of networks there. You can select yours, enter the password, and you'll have an IP as well. So let's go back now to the terminal and let me clean it up. And we can proceed now with the installation of the graphics drivers. So I'm now on a virtual machine, so I need to install a special package, but I'll give you also the packages for Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA cards. So let's type in sudo pacman-s. In my case is xf86-video-qxl. So I'll just hit enter here and I'll proceed with my installation before I enter my root password. And I'll proceed with the installation by hitting enter. And that's done. So if you have an Intel card, you can replace QXL with Intel. If you have an AMD card, you can replace Intel with AMD GPU. And if you have an NVIDIA card, you can replace the whole thing here with NVIDIA and NVIDIA-utils. Then once you have that, you have your drivers installed. So the next step would be to install our display server xorg. So let's do this by typing in sudo pacman-s xorg and hit enter. Accept the defaults by hitting enter and proceed with the installation here by hitting enter. So it's going to take a moment to download and install it. There you go. So let's clean up the terminal. So next we need to install our display manager, and that is going to depend on the desktop environment. So on this tutorial, I'm going to install KDE. So for the display manager, I'm going to choose SDDM. So I'll type in sudo pacman-s sddm and hit enter. Proceed with installation here by hitting enter, and that's installed. Now we need to enable SDDM so that we can boot up graphically. And to do this, we'll type in sudo systemctl enable SDDM and hit enter. So now it's time to install our desktop environment KDE. So let's do this by typing in pacman-s. First package is Plasma. Then I want to install also KDE-applications. And we want to install also package kit-qt5. This is going to be useful if you want to update packages through the Discover Software Center. And then I'm going to install also Scanlight, a small scanning utility. And then we can just hit enter. So accept the defaults here by hitting enter. Again, accept the defaults by hitting enter. One more time, one last time, and now we proceed with the installation by hitting enter. So it's going to take a moment to download and install the packages, and I'll be back when it's done. So our packages are installed, so we can clean up the terminal. Now let's install our productivity suite, LibreOffice. So let's type in sudo pacman-s and then LibreOffice and hit enter. Now we can choose the repository. I'm going to go with the first one, which is LibreOffice Fresh. It's going to offer us the latest features. So I'll just hit enter here and proceed with installation by hitting enter. And it's going to take a moment now to download and install LibreOffice. So I'll be back in a second. And there you go. So let's clean up the terminal. And now it would be nice to have LibreOffice already working with Microsoft fonts. But before we can do this, we need to install Yay, the helper for the Arch user repository. So before we can install Yay, we need to install Git. So let's do this by typing in sudo pacman-s git and hit enter. Proceed with installation here by hitting enter. There you go. And now let's type in git clone, then https://aur.archlinux.org/yay.git and hit enter. There you go. Now let's change the directory to the newly yay directory. So we'll type in cd yay and hit enter. And now we can make the package by typing in make pkg-si and then package build, all in capital letters, and hit enter. So we proceed now with installation of the dependencies by hitting enter. Now we can proceed with the installation of Yay, so we just hit enter here, and Yay is now installed. So let's clean up the terminal, and now we can install our fonts. Let me go back to my home directory here, and we can type in Yay-S and then ttf-ms-fonts and hit enter. So for the repository, we select the default number 1 and hit enter. And differences to show here, we don't need them, so we'll just type in n for none and hit enter. And now it's going to take some time to download and build the package, so I'll be back when it's done. So we are asked now to enter our root password, and the fonts are now installed. So to download Microsoft fonts, it can take a while, and sometimes you might get some connection errors. You just have to let it work, and if some fonts don't get installed, you can try reinstalling the package one more time, as the servers sometimes are very busy. So let's clean up the terminal. Let's install also Timeshift, which is a backup program which comes in very handy when we want to backup our system, and we can use Yay for that. So let's type in Yay-S and then Timeshift and hit enter. Now it's asking me to remove the dependencies after they're installed, but for now I accept the defaults here, so I just hit enter. And differences to show, again I type none and hit enter. And we proceed with the installation of the dependencies by hitting enter. So again, it's going to take a moment to download and build the package, so I'll be back when it's done. And there you go, the package is now installed, so we can clean up the terminal. Now, the last step before we reboot the machine is if you have an SSD in your machine, we can enable the file system trim timer, which will help your SSD live longer and perform better. To do this, we can type in sudo systemctl enable fstrim.timer and hit enter. There you go. Now we are ready to reboot the machine, but I need to type in exit here to exit SSH first. And then I'll move back to my virtual machine here and go full screen. And now I'll type in reboot and hit enter. So we are greeted again from the grab bootloader. So let's hit enter here to start the system. And this is STDM. So let's enter our password here. And we are greeted in KDE. So let me here adjust my screen resolution. Let me go to system settings here and go to display configuration and change my resolution and bump the scale to 200 and click apply. I need to log out once for the changes to take effect. So let me do this very quickly. I click log out here and also here. And again, type in my password. And I'll adjust also the size of the panel here. There you go. And now we are ready to work. So let's have a look at the system. Let's pull up the info tab by typing in info here. And we can see now we are on Plasma version 5.18.4 and the kernel is 5.6, the latest kernel. So we can close this up. Let's have a look also at LibreOffice. So let's type in here Libre and let's click on LibreOffice Writer to see also if the fonts are there. And I'll click OK here. And I see Times New Roman, this is a Microsoft font, is already there. So they are installed. And let's have a look at the version about LibreOffice. And it's version 6.4.3.2, which is the latest version. So let's close this up. And let's have a look also at the system settings to see if the printing system is up and running. So let's go down to printers. And indeed it is up and running. I can click here another printer if I wanted to. And the Bluetooth is also up. Thing is, I don't have any Bluetooth adapter, so I cannot do anything here, but the service is running. So the system is running correctly. So there you go with the full installation with the BIOS system with productivity, and enjoy your new Arch system. So there you go, this was a full installation of Arch Linux on an MBR BIOS system. I hope you liked the video, guys. If you did, please hit the like button below and sub to the channel if you haven't already. Subs really helps us out. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.